I cannot help but think that due to the vast riches that are obtained through liquid gold in the region, and the unpredictability of Iran, that the war on terror was a smokescreen for US dominance for control of the region, and to also put military pressure on the Iranian government. Looking back at my initial months in Afghanistan, I never really committed myself to the mission. I don't know whether this is because of my age and experience from previous tours, or the fact that I was not primarily deployed in a combat role and leading men. In Iraq, I had to convince myself that we were just, as if I had doubts, then my men may have had doubts, and this may have led to indecision, hesitation, and possibly the injury or death of one of us. As a battlefield commander, you have to inspire confidence in your men, and this is a prerequisite for leadership. In Afghanistan, however, I was no longer a commander, but a logistical manager, and this afforded me the luxury of a more holistic outlook. I would observe the vast amounts of heavy ammunition being used against the Taliban with no consideration given towards its destructive power and the unavoidable damage to the local population. This went against the principles of my previous 5 operational tours, where the proportionality of our weapons systems was always predetermined by the law of armed conflict. The high numbers of coalition casualties and deaths, for that matter, would also have a harmful effect on the combat soldiers on the ground. As a result of this, they would disregard the more traditional and reserved British approach to counterinsurgency operations. This would result in British forces being drawn into fighting an unwinnable, symmetrical war against a well-organised and efficient guerrilla force, as this supported the principles of Operation Enduring Freedom. Soldier G would be deployed on Op Herrick 13 as a Fire Support Group, FSG commander. His primary job was to provide heavy supporting fire in overwatch to the infantry, who were generally conducting foot patrols. At his disposal in his 4 Jackal vehicle convoy, he would have snipers, GPMGs, Browning 50 caliber heavy machine guns, 40mm grenade machine guns, GMG, and Javelin anti-tank missiles. In one single engagement, when providing fire support for a company of infantry soldiers in contact with the Taliban, Soldier G gave the orders to fire multiple Javelin missiles and almost depleted all of his GMG ammunition. Soldier G stated that this was necessary as the infantry he was overwatching had sustained several casualties in a fierce 10-minute firefight, and that he was responsible for providing sufficient covering firepower for their tactical withdrawal. This was achieved by winning the firefight, which meant using all of the overpowered and destructive weapons at his disposal. He emphasized that once he had asserted dominance and control of the battle space, the company of infantry were able to tactically withdraw, and the casualties were able to evacuate by helicopter back to Bastion. On return to their patrol base, Soldier G would be thanked by all of the junior commanders as they had been pinned down by Taliban fire in a designated killing zone. It was only because Soldier G's sole concern was the safety of his comrades that he utilized the superior weapons system of his FSG, and they were able to break free with no fatalities. However, the senior commanders were not so content and would criticize Soldier G for being far too aggressive. Soldier G was doing his job effectively with the tools and training that had been authorized for use in this operational theatre. Helmand was no longer under British stewardship, and we were becoming more in line with the US approach to counterinsurgency operations, which was directed towards defeating the Taliban militarily through dominating the ground. Quite often, and from my own experience, once the bullets and bombs start flying, the political element of the operation is no longer significant, and my only purpose at that immediate moment was the well-being and protection of my brothers. I, like Soldier G, was at times criticized for being overly aggressive. But it is through aggression that battles are won, and, in this instance, the company of infantry were able to withdraw without sustaining any further casualties. I acknowledge that at the tactical level, where the warfighting generally happens, the strategic mission is often lost. But one must understand that the junior commander is only focused on his tactical mission and may not necessarily understand or have any strategic insight into the long-term political goals. Was Soldier G in the wrong for using such devastating firepower? Absolutely not. He had used authorized weapons in the correct way and was able to win the firefight and, in doing so, saved the lives of his military brothers.